Donald Trump's second presidential campaign demonstrates a clear trend: the growing influence of his informal inner circle, which increasingly shapes both the strategic priorities of his administration and its prospective foreign economic orientation. For this reason, analyzing the structure of Trump's shadow team, the unofficial environment where preliminary decisions are made, political signals formed, and interests aligned, is of critical importance as it can ultimately shape formal US policy. Within the actions of Trump's current political circle, there is a discernible push to restore commercial ties with Russia. The official rationale is to weaken the increasingly close relationship between Russia and China, thereby depriving Beijing of a key energy partner in the context of mounting US-China rivalry, a conflict for which the United States appear to be preparing. Trump has clearly identified China as Washington's principal strategic adversary, and believes that European conflicts should primarily be resolved by European powers. However, a deeper analysis reveals that certain individuals close to Trump maintain business connections with Russia, often routed through the UAE and Saudi Arabia. For them, restoring commercial ties with Moscow represents not just geopolitical strategy, but also a personal finance opportunity. As a result, there is a growing effort to establish an informal architecture of contracts between Trump's team and Kremlin, with the aim of facilitating future back-channel negotiations. So for now, we'll talk about circles of influence around Trump. Trump's entourage can be roughly divided into three interconnectable, yet distinct circles that differ in status and level of public visibility. The first circle consists of official figures and government employees who hold formal positions within Trump's administration. They are staunch supporters of the president, but remain uninformed about informal or back-channel decisions. This group includes the chief of staff, members of the transition team, and figures responsible for foreign policy and national security, such as Marco Rubio, US Secretary of State, and, by the way, National Security Advisor for now, Susie Wales, White House Chief of Staff, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, Stephen Miller, Homeland Security Advisor, and other official appointees. While they are involved in shaping and executing official policy, they are not included in behind-the-scenes diplomacy, and therefore occupy the third circle of influence. Within this circle, Rubio stands out as the most reasonable among the unreasonable. He is likely to bear the blame for failed decisions stemming from secret diplomacy. Despite their formal roles, their actual influence over Trump is limited. Their task is to remain loyal, maintain control over specific areas of government, and implement policies defined by Trump himself. The second circle is made up of major business figures who have already assumed key roles in Trump's apparatus. This includes individuals such as Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk, DJ Vance, Vice President, Steve Witkoff, Scott Bessent, US Secretary of the Treasury, and other Trump-aligned figures from the tech and energy sectors. These individuals blend business interests with growing influence over the political agenda. Finally, the third, least public but most influential circle includes business associates and long-time partners close to Trump family who hold no official government roles but play a key part in informal communications, including the representatives of foreign governments. This group includes Jared Kushner, Donald Trump Jr., and likely others who remain largely unknown to the public. It's this circle that shapes the foreign policy priorities of the administration, often placing the expansion of their own business ventures at the top of the agenda. So let's start. At the center of the renewed architecture of back-channel contacts stand Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law and former White House advisor. Following the death of Sultan Qaboos of Oman in 2020, Kushner firmly established himself as the informal intermediary between Donald Trump and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Kushner facilitated a series of quiet contacts that continued beyond the end of Trump's presidential term, leveraging both his personal relationship with the Crown Prince and his private equity fund, Affinity Partners, which has formal commercial commitments from the Saudi government. Through Affinity Partners, which received a $2 billion investment from Saudi Arabia, Kushner built business bridges with entities linked to Kirill Dmitryev's Russian Direct Investment Fund. In 2023, he met with the Yaris Al-Rumayyan, head of Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund, a fund involved in joint ventures with the Russian fund. Since the creation of Affinity Partners in 2021, Kushner has focused on strategic investments in critical infrastructure across Asia and Caucasus. His portfolio includes projects tied to ports and infrastructure in Georgia, Kazakhstan, and Azerbaijan, key transit points increasingly used by Russia to reroute its export and logistics flows in response to Western sanctions. By 2024, Affinity Partners formally announced its interest in further investment in Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, two countries that serve as crucial channels for Russian sanctions evasion mechanisms. That same year, Mohammed bin Salman proposed the idea of a neutral platform for Russia-Ukraine negotiations. According to Arab News, Kushner acted as a key US operator in this process, relaying potential terms of understanding to Trump's prospective team through private discussions. Though unofficial, his role was pivotal. Saudi intermediaries used him to send signals to the Kremlin and vice versa. Furthermore, an investigation by The Intercept revealed that several companies funded by Kushner's Affinity Partners had contracts to supply equipment that later reached Russia via intermediaries in the United Arab Emirates. These relations sparked concern in the US Congress about the potential conflict of interests between Trump's future foreign policy and the private business activities of his family. In May 2024, Kushner made a discreet visit to Budapest, which held a confidential meeting with the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. The visit was not tied to any public event and went unreported by official channels. Just a week later, Orban traveled to Moscow, raising suspicions about a coordinated messaging effort. This sequence of events suggests that Kushner may also use Orban as a courier to transmit or coordinate signals between the Trump team and the Russian leadership. So to sum up, Kushner serves as a hybrid intermediary, blending geopolitical engagement with the financial instruments. He holds no official position, but this very informality makes him an ideal and a flexible conduit in the eyes of both Saudi and Russian actors. Another key figure in this network is Steve Witkoff, the current US Special Envoy to the Middle East. In December 2024, even before Trump's official return to office, Witkoff participated in ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas. He is credited by brokering with truce that brought a temporary halt to hostilities, solidifying his image as an effective diplomat in Trump's eyes. Following this success, Witkoff likely became the primary official negotiator between the US and Russia. As Trump reasserted himself on a political stage, Kate Kellogg, the former special representative for Ukraine, who had advocated for European involvement in negotiations, was pushed aside. In his place, an unofficial triangle of influence emerged: Witkoff, Kushner, and Donald Trump Jr. In February 2025, Witkoff made a personal trip to Moscow, where he held a 3-hour meeting with Vladimir Putin. Officially, the talks concerned the potential release of US citizen Mark Fogel, but sources indicated that the core topic was a roadmap for ending the war in Ukraine. Witkoff reportedly insisted on including Kirill Dmitryev in the negotiation process, citing the effectiveness of informal diplomacy. Against his backdrop, the business dimension of Witkoff's activities is especially relevant. As a founder of Witkoff Group, he holds deep connections in the real estate sector, particularly in the Middle East. He is a long-time business associate of Donald Trump, and through joint projects in Dubai, may have established direct links to Dmitry. Notably, Dmitriev himself maintains business ties in both New York and Saudi Arabia. And according to the Moscow Times, which cites unofficial sources, the Russian Direct Investment Fund is preparing to launch a joint investment fund with Dubai Holding, in which Witkoff is a key partner. This emerging financial channel presents a potential bridge between the Kremlin and Trump's inner circle. Another figure who should not be overlooked is Eric Prince, founder of Blackwater and an informal advisor to Trump's team during the transition period. Prince has been involved in various national security projects, and following Trump's re-election, he began actively lobbying for a more prominent role within the new administration, although no official meetings have been confirmed. Sources, however, point to his ties with Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, and Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense. In November 2024, Prince attended an event at Mar-a-Lago that brought together key Trump allies, where he openly aligned himself with the MAGA movement and signaled his continued ambition to play a role in shaping policy. More recently, Prince has been advocating for the use of private military contractors, PMCs, in countering Mexican drug cartels, a proposal consistent with Trump's preference for non-traditional military tools. Of particular interest is his involvement in negotiations regarding the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. As previously noted, Trump appears interested in securing access to the country's mineral resources in exchange for providing security guarantees. According to the Wall Street Journal, Prince has been directly involved in these talks, aligning with Trump's strategy of avoiding deployment of regular US troops. Prince may also serve as a back-channel link between Trump and Kremlin. In January 2017, he met with the Kirill Dmitriev, head of Russian Direct Investment Fund, about which we've talked earlier, and a representative of Mohammed bin Zayed, the Crown Prince of the UAE, on the Seychelles Islands. The meeting reportedly aimed to explore the possibility of creating an unofficial communication channel between the Trump's administration and Moscow, a claim all parties have since denied. Netherlands, Prince has continued to expand his contracts with Russian actors. In July 2024, he reportedly traveled to Russia to discuss security matters related to African mining operations. In 2020, he was also linked to Wagner Group. This web of contacts has now dissipated. Instead, it has evolved into a complex multi-layered system where business interests, political influence, and informal diplomacy merge into a unified operational framework. Interestingly, Donald Trump's own interests within this architecture of informal connections are largely represented by his son, Donald Trump Jr. He plays a critical role in ensuring that portions of future financial flows are funneled into the Trump's business empire, while his father secures the political mechanisms to enable it. This arrangement mirrors the pattern of Trump's first term, with one key difference. Trump Jr. is now actively involved in international political engagements. As executive vice president of the Trump's organization, Donald Jr. has overseen major real estate projects since the early 20s. One particularly significant endeavor was the Trump Tower Moscow project, a proposed skyscraper in central Moscow developed in cooperation with the real estate developer Aras Sakhrazanov and Felix Sater, a business intermediary with a criminal record and deep connections to Russian elites. Despite public denials, negotiations over the project continues at least through June 2016, in the midst of his father's presidential campaign. Trump Jr. gave conflicting testimony to Congress regarding his knowledge of the deal. However, the latter release of his communications with Sutter and Michael Cohen revealed deliberate efforts to conceal the fact that negotiations had taken place. Though their project was ultimately abandoned, Mueller's investigation confirmed that the entire initiative carried opaque and politically risky implications. On the political front, Trump Jr. is a prominent promoter of his father's message, especially among ultra-conservative audiences. He was deeply involved in 2016, 2020, and the 2024 election campaigns and played a role in several controversial episodes. Notably, his 2016 meeting with Russia lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya was seen as an attempt to obtain compromising material on Hillary Clinton and became the subject of the Senate's investigation into Russian elections interference. In 2025, Trump Jr.'s name re-emerged in connections with the foreign policy controversies. According to Politico, he participated alongside Jared Kushner and Tucker Carlson in unofficial meetings with the members of the Ukraine opposition, reportedly aimed at promoting the idea of early elections in Ukraine. This initiative, potentially favorable to Moscow, underscores Trump Jr.'s growing role in informal diplomacy outside the official Washington channels. At the same time, he remains publicly loyal to his father and serves as a trusted intermediary for unofficial initiatives that often operate outside formal state protocols. His position within the family business, access to international financial networks, and influence over controversial voter bases make Donald Trump Jr. a personal conduit linking Trump's pivotal interests, foreign policy ambitions, and back-channel communications within states such as Russia. Also, an increasingly important figure within Trump's circles of influence is J.D. Vance, the current Vice President of the United States. In the former policy domain, Vance has emerged as primarily advocate for Trump's position on Ukraine. He has consistently pushed for halting military aid to Kyiv, establishing a demilitarized zone on occupied Ukrainian territory, and rejecting Ukraine's path towards NATO membership. Vance has publicly stated that Ukraine should cede territory in exchange for peace, echoing the core narrative of both the Trump team and effectively the Kremlin. Domestically, Vance champions the American First doctrine, emphasizing a strategic shift away from Europe and toward containment of China. He increasingly serves as an informal liaison between the Trump administration and external partners, particularly in matters related to Russia. His public messaging aligns closely with informal diplomatic efforts aimed at forging a peace deal on terms favorable on Moscow. On several occasions, Vance has legitimized the notion that negotiations can only happen through Ukrainian concessions. Vance also plays a key role in shaping a new technocratic wing of the Republican Party. With deep ties to billionaire Peter Thiel, who bankrolled his political rise, Vance promotes ideas centered on weakening democratic institutions, expanding state control, and introducing digital governance mechanisms. Thiel, a leading advocate of techno-authoritarianism in the US, experts growing influence over the political discourse within Trump's orbit. Despite having harshly criticized Trump in 2016, calling him an idiot and America's Hitler, by 2024, Vance had become one of the Trump's most loyal allies. His rhetoric, policy positions, and a public persona now align fully with the MAGA movement. This transformation has made him not just acceptable, but highly desirable to the conservative base. His political strength lies in his ability to blend right-wing populism with a technocratic efficiency. Thanks to his book Hillbilly Elegy, Vance became a symbol of the forgotten America, gaining support among white working-class communities. Simultaneously, his access to technological elites, while Thiel and other Silicon Valley networks, positions him as a figure capable of mobilizing significant resources. Vance openly supports Viktor Orban's governance model and broader Eurosceptic principles, signaling a preference for sovereign democracy, a system with a limited foreign institutional influence and a strong emphasis on national control. Vance is now promoted as the new face of the Republican Party, embodying a fusion of radicalism and tax-saving thinking. His political rise is inseparable from Thiel's influence, not just as his primarily donor, but as an ideological mentor. Thiel's model envisions governance driven not by classical democratic procedures, but by technology, artificial intelligence, and centralized authority. Vance has become the public carrier of this vision. Another key factor is Vance's close relations with the Trump's family, particularly with Donald Trump Jr. He regularly participates in informal meetings that shape the administration's unofficial strategy, placing him firmly within its inner circle and giving him clout in an increasingly fragile power structure. So, as a conclusion, by 2025, a complex and informal network of contacts between Trump's team and the Kremlin has become increasingly formalized. This network is driven not by a political or illogical alignment, but above all by a web of personal, financial, and business interests, linking figures such as Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, Kirill Dmitriev, Eric Prince potentially, Yuri Ushakov, and Andrei Kostin. Together they form the architecture of parallel diplomacy that could shape not only by the future of US-Russia relations, but also the fate of the whole world. Thank you for watching. Put down your ideas in comments, and if you want, you can support us in our Patreon. Best wishes, Conflict Capital.